Jump on in, the water's warm, ladies and gentlemen. I am Pasta Jardula.
And I'm Fiorella.
Welcome back to the CONVO couch. Last weekend, we just got to go to San Francisco to cover the KDEM, so we have a big breaking story for you. We were eyes and ears all over the place. We covered a lot of things. Like we said, Fiorella was the live stream queen. If you want to go back and visit some of our live streams, go to our Facebook page. If you want to see some of the interviews we have, come on over to the CONVO couch or the MCSC network. We prefer you come to the CONVO couch because we need some more love over there. We have interviews with some people from Need to Impeach, Norman Solomon on Joe Biden. We have Kimberly Ellis. We have me hugging Dr. Cornel West. There was a lot of things going on. Even
Ben Cohen.
Ben Cohen. I called him Jerry Cohen. Partner of Jerry. Ben Cohen jumping up Bernie beats Trump. But first, and ultimately, fam, let's talk about the main reason why we were over there for the KDEM convention. It was the election of the chair.
Right. So Kimberly Ellis was running again against, this time, Rusty Hicks, Daraka Larimore Hall, and a few other candidates. But her main, adversary, I would say, was going to be Rusty Hicks because he was the one that was the centrist party favorite. Mm-hmm. But at the California Democratic Convention, the Democratic Party appeared so fractured that there was so many supporters for Kimberly Ellis. They completely packed the entire arena. And a lot of her supporters were simply calling out the hypocrisy of the Democratic Party to tokenize and use women of color, specifically Black women, for votes. But then when they have the ability to empower these women to actual positions of power where they make choices, they decide to instead choose the old white guy. So let's focus a little bit on how this happened. Rusty Hicks is a Labor candidate, but I wanted to show a little bit of the support that Kimberly got, and I wanted to show a little bit of the what people were saying, what her supporters were saying.
Black women are the cornerstone of democracy. And whether the powers that be in our party want to admit it or not, we are the cornerstone of this party.
So here we can see them calling it out, right? It's funny because when it comes to supporting Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren or it was Hillary Clinton, the Democratic Party is always talking about women, especially women of color. But when it comes to actually doing that, like I said, they're calling them out. They're saying they're not doing this. They're not, the powers that be are not letting this progressive woman get into power, right? Mm-hmm. And Rusty Hicks was the chosen one because he was framed as a Labor candidate, the union guy. Mm-hmm. And it's partly true because Rusty Hicks has ties to big oil. He is a Labor guy for the union oil industry. So he actually is one of those candidates that's supported by them because these blue collar workers that work for the oil industry do not like the Green New Deal. They do not like environmentalists. They are completely against that. And the reason they're against that is because they're afraid of losing all these jobs in the oil industry and they have nowhere to go. So it's kind of a fair discussion, right? Because It's like, where are we going to put these people if we take them outside? We need to have a workforce in there and green technologies to push them over there. But I don't think anybody's developed that. And so until we develop that, you're going to have the union fighting against the environment, which is completely, we all lose in that.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing to take from this here, ladies and gentlemen. You got to understand what's going on because I talked to a lot of delegates, even delegates that were Bernie supporters, the progressive supporter, but they supported Rusty Hicks. And I would ask them, why are you supporting me? And like, well, I'm a confession. I'm Labor through and through. And like you said, this kind of parallels what happened when West Virginia, when Hillary Clinton said, oh, your coal jobs are going away. But she didn't talk like Sanders did to say, hey, this is what we're going to transition you to. These are the jobs you're going to have. So there were a lot of delegates that can be considered somewhat progressive, but they voted for Rusty because he has this stigma of labor, like kind of like Bernie Sanders does. And we as people and as the party themselves, they got to figure out a way, if we pull away from this big oil, if we pull away from these other means of unionized jobs that are in these fields, what are we going to transition them to? And that's what I took from this whole kind of like this weekend. Like, because a lot of people had told me, said the last time, they voted for Kimberly Ellis because they felt it was straight up good versus evil. It was a pharmaceutical lobbyist, and that's who Bauman was. And that even was a questionable election because we'll get to elections when it comes to the Democratic Party. But this time they felt that, Ellis went away for a little bit after she lost. She wasn't around as much, and that Rusty had the union kind of stigma behind him. So to me, this whole thing like hit place because I wanted to see like, well, you know, what has Rusty Hicks done that was so bad? And it was like he hasn't done a bunch of things. He just came out of the blue, and he's a union organizer, but he does have ties to big oil.
Oh, and he's not in any. I'm not in any way framing Rusty Hicks well because I looked into his FEC filings.
Yes.
And he gets money from the Cheney Foundation. He gets money from very like establishment corporate types of foundation, both Republicans and Democrats. Let me see if I can find it. But one of the reasons that this is happening is because there is a Building and Construction Trade Council, and these people are trying to form a blue collar revolution, unionizing and gathering 400,000 workers to stand against the Green New Deal, which is absolutely horrible because this is all big oil putting their money in there. This is how big oil prevents us from going into green tech.
Yeah.
But we need a solid plan to get there. But one of the things that actually happened, fam, that was actually bad, that actually set an ominous tone in this whole thing was the fact that several delegates spoke out against this type of bullying that was happening from the Rusty Hicks camp. Yeah. And these people were being told that if they did not go to and vote for Rusty Hicks, they would be subject to possibly losing their jobs, losing their credentials. A lot of these people wanted to run for office for certain committees and certain positions, and they were told that it was gonna be impossible or else is the language they used. I spoke to a young lady, Mariah, who went there as kind of like to learn because she wants to be a delegate, and she actually stopped a Rusty Hicks person from bullying one of her friends or someone she barely even knew. But she was like, hey, she heard the conversation and she was like, hey, you can't do that. You can't be targeting this person like that. And there was multiple stories too. Zach Denny talked about it very much. There was also a threat to the Muslim community there as well. There was neo-Nazis at the convention. So there was so much going on. But what I'm seeing here is, again, the bullying of the Democratic Party and how they manipulate and coerce people with fear in order to get them to vote the way they want them to. So we have a little video here of Maria Estrada. And I want to show the results real quick, Johnny, actually, if you can pull up the results, because we didn't get to see them. Yeah, so the results.
So 57%. He got over the threshold of 50.1.
Even with all the other candidates, she would have still not gotten in. But I think the coercion and all of that is
Played
something to be left
yeah.
to interpretation. So here is the thing. Let's go ahead and pull up the Maria Estrada video.
Hi, it's Maria, and I live streamed this morning. I guess I couldn't hear it because I think I had my finger over the microphone, I suppose. And I was just want to follow up on this chairs race. I had been told before the election that people were getting contacted, delegates were getting contacted, being told that they, were being threatened with.
Oh. That was the part that we were getting to.
We got it.
A lot of people apparently got a lot of those calls and texts and messages, telling them how to vote or else. So that's not surprising. That's all part of the way the party works. It's like a mafia. And they wanted to make sure that their guy won, and he did. And so here we are. And this is the same guy that knew that a lot of these ADEM elections, first of all, he didn't even know what an ADEM election is because he's never been part of any organization within the party, a club or anything like that. So he didn't even know what an ADEM election was. He was just asked to run to take over the chair seat by Rendon, and then Rendon made a call or had a gathering with the assembly and sent out a message saying that they need to take over all these seats, which is why they bust in all these people all up and down the state to vote in these elections. So I had my hearing on Friday.
And they did bust people in.
And she's going to talk about her hearing later and possible kind of go into that. But basically, just so you guys know, it's not a one person, one vote thing when it comes to voting. California has a weighted vote leaning heavily in favor of the legislatures, the people in power, so that they all get 7 votes. The legislators all get 7 votes, but Congress members get 7, and the state officials, if you're already a state official, you get 30 votes. So if I'm a delegate and if I'm a legislature, I get so much less than someone who is already a public official. If I'm a legislature, I get more than what a delegate gets.
Do we have those numbers anywhere? I mean, is there any numbers out there that show how much the delegates voted for Kimberly as opposed to the legislature? Because what you're saying, and a lot of people don't understand how this works, those are super delegates. They're not elected, they're selected. And most of them were in the bag for Rusty Hicks. And I think it was kind of genius by the Democratic Party to run a guy like Rusty, who didn't have a lot of dirt with him in politics, except we're following the money right now.
Yeah.
So he came off as this like kind of labor mentality, you know, this labor guy, which was the whole, you know, allure to Bernie Sanders. Oh, he's for workers, he's for labor. So I thought they were genius. And I also want to say one thing, fam, before we get into some more stuff, and I want your opinions about that. I love Kimberly Ellis. I wish she ran a better campaign. I wish we would have learned a little bit more about this stuff for Rusty before it was out there. We didn't get enough. And this is the problem with the R.L. Miller pledges and the we won't smear anybody. Because as soon as you just bring up facts, and like they do this to Bernie Sanders, they say that you're smearing, that you're going below the belt. And they kind of put that stigma on you. And I would have liked to know a little bit more about Rusty's past, where he gets his money from. And also, we got to keep talking about the delegate process. If one elected delegate gets 1 vote compared to a legislated person getting 30 and another central delegate or whatever you call them getting 7, the fugaziness of this all. So if anybody has any numbers out there, anybody has numbers of the breakdown of delegates to super delegates, please send them over.
Well, not super delegates, but
they are super.
Not super delegates in the name itself. It's not. That's not what it's called.
What are they called?
According to James Elia, who is a delegate, he said that 65 to 70% of the delegate vote, just regular delegate vote, went to Kimberly Ellis.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
So if it wasn't so heavily weighted in favor of the people in power already, then she would have likely won. Because that's why you saw so much support for her out there at the convention, because she did have the majority of the delegates. But unfortunately, because the way the system is structured, it doesn't matter. It's again like what Pasta meant is like it's similar to the superdelegate system in our Democratic elections for the presidential race. So again, this is another way the Democratic Party does this. And he gets money from Boeing. Boeing. Okay. Yeah, he's not a progressive. He's not a typical union. Doesn't mean good anymore. Unfortunately, unions have had to function in a system that's capitalist and that pits people against each other. And capitalism has allowed pitting the environment against union labor, which is crazy and it's wrong. And we need to completely stop that.
Can I say something else about Rusty Hicks? He's boring.
Yeah,
he's like boring. He's like more boring than De Leon, and De Leon is boring. I mean, I'd rather watch grass grow or fucking paint dry than the 3 freaking speeches from Rusty Hicks. They're nothing but platitudes. They don't mean shit. And, you know, I don't know. He's just like, I don't know why they come up with these uninspiring fucking people to be head the party.
Because
and we just take
about
this
the money
laying down.
Okay, so just moving on, I have a couple tweets I want to show. I did a whole Twitter thread on the breaking. If you want to go on the actual tweet, Jonathan, you can. If not, you can just show.
Yeah, I'd like to see this. Can I read it?
Yeah, please.
Breaking. Assembly delegates who wish to remain anonymous for now have confirmed they were threatened with losing their jobs if they didn't vote for Rusty Hicks, the big oil establishment candidate who just won the chair of the California Democratic Party. This is a developing story.
I don't think that's how you would
like
sound.
it?
That's actually good.
Was that good?
That's your good radio voice.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
And basically, I'm repeating the same thing I just told you guys on camera, but I'm talking about how this is important because when we have someone like Rusty Hicks that's tied to the establishment as chair, and then we have Alex Padilla, who literally was campaigning for Hillary Clinton while he was in charge of the elections, it literally makes it almost impossible for a progressive to get in there because they're not going to just sit around and let it happen. They're going to do their damnedest to completely stop progressives from getting in there. So...
and, you know, not only that, not only does the system rigs when it comes to the delegates, the actual CRC, those credential shit, we'll get to that too, another sham. And I don't understand this because this is the number one pressing issue. Number one above everything. It's election integrity. If we don't have election integrity, we have nothing. Zero, nothing. It's not a democracy. And the Democratic Party, especially in California, it's not a party of the people. It's a party of insiders. And we need to change that. Fam, what else do we got? Because I love this stuff you have here.
There's just more receipts on how people were really upset about the convention, the delegates in particular. This person said the intimidation tactics and threats used on the other side were shameful and show how much we desperately need change within the party and how important it is that we keep fighting. The amount of sexism and racism in this race was also shameful, and we must do better as Democrats. But as they say, don't more organize a movement to change the party cannot be about one candidate or one race. The problems of our party run too deep to be changed overnight. It's going to take a lot to get the systemic change we desperately need. So that is like a good take, but it's also saying like, oh, we can't just stop. You can't just stop fighting for it because that's what they want you to do. They do this because they want you to just give up and let them run the whole show, which is why I understand the Dem enter mentality. However, there's only so much people can take before they're like completely done.
Well, we said it's when is it time for the pitchforks? When is it time to take to the streets? Really? I mean, these people are going to allow Trump to go right back into office. And it's two ways because we get the same type of suppression here online and stuff, demonetizing bullshit, slowing stuff down, not putting us in the algorithm. All these little small independent medias, they all get it. So it's a two-way street against the people. They want to suppress us so we get frustrated and we don't do this anymore so we can't squeak and tell the people what's what. And that's why we showed up at this place. That's why we sat in these rooms. That's why we walked all this to the convention, because we want to let you, the people, know the truth about what's really going on, not what the mainstream media tells you.
Right, because California likes to talk about how progressive they are when really there's some of the most corrupt people. I have never seen the amount of corruption here in other places because people think it's just in Florida, for instance, where we're from. It's like Republican versus Democrat. They're both corrupt. It's really even rare to find any kind of progressive there. But here you come thinking that they're going to be different, and they're not. There's more progressives as delegates now. There's been kind of a small, slightly a significant change, but at the same time, they are shut out from the power, and it's really frustrating. And I'm going to point this out, which you're going to go into this later. Someone mentioned the District 51 issue where progressives were denied information that they personally flew to Sacramento to inspect the books themselves. I think we're talking about Maria Estrada here. And then delivered their findings to the appropriate compliance review bodies. Yeah. And based on the compliance by the conventions, they found that there were delegates who had their jobs threatened if they didn't vote for Rusty. And I'm sure more will be coming up in the next few days. So these are just like information tidbits of how people were intimidated both before in the congressional district of 51 and actually assembly district of 51 and we did show up there. And this isn't just one instance is what I'm saying. Like this happened right at the KDEM, but it also happened with the assembly delegate race. It happened also before that when Maria Estrada ran against Anthony Rendon and she literally proved her case. And they completely overlooked it, and we're going to be talking about that a little bit later. Yeah. But I think this is one of the last posts. People's careers were threatened this weekend. Electeds, for the most part, bound their delegates to Rusty. Unions across the state learned on their members of the Central Committee and ADEM delegations. Legislatures ran their own slates in the ADEMs, a third of the delegation specifically created to take power from the legislature. So here's again the power of the legislatures running their own slates. Remember, what's her name? Katie Porter. Yeah. Katie Porter was in Orange County pushing her slate, and so her establishment people could win. And then now she gets to Congress and people are like, oh my God, she's so progressive. And I'm like, you guys, she's not. And it's like, you have to know the ins and outs of all this thing that's happening. The machine that elected Bauman gave us Rusty. Extremely true. And until that machine is cut off at various fronts, what happened this weekend will never end. And that's the entire point of it. And I think we can skip that.
I want to just say something while you're looking for this. Listen, ladies and gentlemen, me and Fam went to 5 of these ADEMs, okay? Almost every single one was a sham. It's kind of funny because the one... our district was the one that wasn't the biggest sham, but they still had some bullshit going on. They still tried to pull me out of the room to not let me film, and I had to yell at them and say, screw you, I'm filming. And you can go to our Facebook, which has a lot of the raw footage of the videos of the people giving speeches because I want to YouTube, we have it some, but mostly on our Convo Couch Facebook is where a lot of that raw footage was put up. Even Sasha, who got over like a couple thousand hits on hers when I went to her thing, and it was just so much bullshit going on. And I saw the elected officials at every single one of these ADEM elections. We saw the buses there. They just parked it right out in front, fam. They were not letting us go around in 51. 51, it was a bullying culture there, and they had to redo those. But they didn't redo 63, which I don't even understand because they just held them to a different standards and different rules. But anyways, did you have something else you wanted to read?
Yeah, just this person is asking, why did Cali legislatures choose to back Hicks? And they answered because Kimberly Ellis was willing to challenge the money laundering system that the party has in place. So there are allegations also of money laundering, which we've seen in other states, like with Debbie Wasserman Schultz in Florida and buying the pink Cadillacs, and how this is why the Democratic Party is pretty much they don't have money. The California Democratic Party, on the other hand, has a lot of money. Yeah. They are so powerful.
Can I tell you something, too? It was the same reason why they didn't want Bernie Sanders in 2016. They lose their jobs. A lot of those people's in that CRC and those credentials committees, all those people up there that were pro-establishment, all you have to do is go to their Twitters. They're liking Biden, Kamala, whatnot. And those are the people that have to benefit. They benefit from a Rusty Hicks maintaining power. Those are the people that are voting to decide whether these elections are fair or not, or if there should be another election. The thing is, Kimberly Ellis gets in, they lose their jobs. Just like all these establishment Democrats, when Bernie gets in, they lose their jobs. They'd rather lose to Bernie, they'd rather lose to Kimberly Ellis or any situation than lose their jobs. So
exactly, which is understandable, but you need to stop giving into the blackmail. Zach Denny is also a delegate, and he was the one that was very vocal on Facebook, social media, talking about what happened. But a lot of these delegates, you all have to understand, it's not like they're just going to be like, come forward and admit all of this. They don't want to lose their positions. The Democratic Party are a bunch of bullies, and they will do something to them. And it's kind of ridiculous. People are like, you're a conspiracy theorist for saying this. I'm like, no, we were there. People, we saw this. This isn't something we're making up. No. Like, this is, we were there for specifically because we knew we had heard stories before through other delegates that this happened, and now we were seeing it for ourselves. And I'm not going to read the whole thing on this, but I have to put this up. I can't seriously and ethically recruit people to become involved in the California Democratic Party if the culture of retaliation and threats continues. It will have to come with a disclaimer. I've heard from a number of members of the new class of delegates and those who observed this past weekend who were disturbed by what they saw, read, and for some experienced. It's crazy. And then he goes on to talk about what we need. But here's the thing. A lot of these people don't want to talk about it. They just want to push it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen. And nothing's going to change until you talk about it. And the reason this is so important is because California is such an primary for the presidential election. And if we don't get our shit together, we are going to literally reelect Donald Trump, and none of us want that, I think. And
we won't get any really progressive policy. That's the thing. Fracking won't end. The drilling of the oil won't end. I mean, Rusty's got those ties. We're not going to get green. We're not going to, all this shit. We're not going to help people get, we're not helping get the homeless off the street by doing this, I'm saying. We're moving backwards. And the thing that is most disturbing is a lot of those progressives that were like burners back in 2016 that were dem-entering to change the party. They stopped. And instead, they joined the party. Okay, they became insiders themselves. They became acceptable of the corruption and the fraud that's going on. I mean, there was a lady who spoke in one of these CRC meetings, and she said straight up, when fraud has been established, we have to straighten shit out. They don't want to straighten shit out. So those people who were raging against the machine have now joined the machine. And here's the sad thing, fam. They didn't even need to get paid. They just wanted to sit at the table with the cool kids.
And
there you go.
Another thing he said is, I'm still waiting to hear Rusty Hicks' plans to do in regards to numerous delegates that had their jobs and livelihoods threatened if they didn't vote for him. If you're going to do that and run as a progressive, you need to start calling out that culture of bullying inside of your party. And fam, I wanted to mention this guy because I had this on before you were going to interview him, but he's constantly...
he's agreed to an interview.
He's constantly talking ridiculous things about me and other people, but he was supporting Jardula, and now his language is, oh, we need to come together with Rusty Hicks, blah 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 blah. I know a lot of people say that, but to me it's like, how can you come together when there's no accountability? Again, it's the issue of unity against accountability. How dare you, with all the corruption that you let on and you admitted to happened, which Pasta's going to talk about too in a minute, how can you just say, oh, we can just need to back and support this party without any accountability? No, I'm sorry. If this is happening, if this kind of fraud and this kind of rigging is happening, not just in this election, but in multiple elections since 2016, then no, you can't just shove it under the rug and pretend it didn't happen simply because you can't do anything about it. And it wouldn't matter anyway. Yeah. And so I disagree with the people in these leadership positions. And I advocate for many of you who are activists on the streets to continue to push to get inside that party, because they need you, because these people are pretending to be progressive and they're actually working against us. Yeah. And it's something that people are going to tell you you're a conspiracy theorist, that you don't know what you're talking about. But we're literally showing you receipts. We were there. We have multiple videos we're going to be releasing, and we're going to continue investigating this because, again, California is the 5th largest economy in the world, and we're basically a little country on our own, and people need to know that what's happening here is most certainly happening across the United States.
Yeah, and it's just the fact that, I've said this all the time, and I asked this to Jane Elbrecht when I caught her. How can we have unity without accountability? How can we unite if you guys have never been accountable for what you do? But I also want to point out now, too, as well, that they're still doing it. They're still not running fair elections. They're still giving the gaslighting out there, and we're going to get into it, we're going to show it, talk about it. And once again, David Atkins has agreed to have an interview with me on Saturday, and I told him I would be respectful and polite. That doesn't mean I'm going to get emotional and angry about the things that are happening, because regardless of your feelings of Maria Estrada, you need to speak out against election integrity. And they had no integrity in these ADEMs. They were a friggin' sham. And we have videos of people who voted for Trump actually going in and casting ballots in Orange County and other places. I mean, every single place, it's ridiculous. And then we'll hear the reasons for that coming from David Atkins and other people and stuff. So I just want to leave it at that, fam. And we'll
be right back.
Yeah. Why don't we just play a commercial now? And want to go into it? All right, we'll come right back.
Thanks, guys. We'll BRB.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the CRC.
Ooh.